Hello everybody, welcome back to Analyzing Our Games Part 29. This game I played last year, 2021, against a very strong opponent and friend of mine called Murilo at Memorial Hernani de Oliveira. It's a very interesting game. I was lost most of the time after the opening, but I managed to equalize and go into a drawing position. Let's go for the moves. So I played e4, c5, knight f3, knight c6, d4, c takes d4, knight takes d4, e6. So this is called Taimanov. It's a very difficult one to play against, at least for me. So I think I still have to study a lot to handle this kind of positions better. And then I remember I stopped for a while to think about this position, and I decided to play c4. So go into something called Maroczy bind. So a6, knight c3, bishop b4, bishop e3, knight c6, and bishop d3. There's an interesting variation here that we take on c6, then b takes c6, e5, knight e4, queen d4, f5, protecting the knight, and then I would take on passant, queen takes on f6, a3, attacking the bishop, queen takes, bishop takes on c3 check, and b takes on c3. White's a little bit better here, maybe because of the uh, uh, pair of bishops, but I don't think it's nothing to write home about. Yeah, so white has double pawns. It's an equal position, we can say. Okay, but we didn't play this. I was a little bit um, trying to avoid this exchange on c6. I don't think it's a good idea, but now, as I told you, I have to study more to better understand these positions. Okay, then I played bishop d3. My opponent played here, knight e5. Maybe with the idea of going this knight to g4, exchange the bishop. Then I played here f3. It's not the best move here. I think castling is better. Yeah, and you can't be afraid. You don't need to be afraid of knight g4 because you can move the bishop. Yeah, because the knight is not on c6 anymore. So f3. My opponent castled. It's also possible to play d5 here. So that's why I think it's difficult to play against these positions as white, because black gets a very free game. Yeah, black equalizes very quickly and easily. So maybe this is a question of trying to avoid this Taimanov or Kan system. Okay, so after castling, I played rook c1. It's also possible to castles. Yeah, d5, c takes d5, e takes d5. It's an equal position, and I think we're gonna get to this position later. So rook c1, Murillo played d5. That's the best move. I took with the c pawn. He took with the e pawn. Then I castled. Rook e8, the best move again. Yeah, so trying to get some advantages over the semi-open file. Then I took on d5 because I was a little bit afraid of these files here, and I thought it would be better to liquidate some, to exchange some pieces to avoid these columns and maybe get some kind of um, bad bad position here. The computer says it's better to play bishop b1. Yeah, But you know, we're not computers, so it's kind of a difficult move to make. Then black can take on c3. Then I can recapture with the rook. Then takes on e4. Bishop takes, knight takes, f takes on e4. See, then I would have an isolated pawn. I don't think this is very serious or it's a bad thing, but yeah, sometimes we are a little bit afraid of playing against or for the isolated pawn. Then bishop e6, h3, and h6. It's an equal position because if bishop takes on g2 on a2, then I could play b3 and try to imprison this bishop here on a2. So this would be dangerous. Okay, so after taking on this d5, my opponent retook it, and I took with the pawn, and there's an intermezzo here. So my opponent played knight takes d3, good. I took with the queen, and my opponent took on d5. So we get to this position here. As you can see, my pawn is attacked. This rook is very well posted here, so it's attacking this bishop. So my pieces are a little bit discoordinated, but yeah, my opponent still has to develop his bishop and put the rooks in better positions. Then I played rook f d1. It's not the best, of course, because then I lost the a2 pawn. Better would have been to take on to play queen c4. Then, in case of my opponent took on c4, took with the rook, bishop, and rook c3. So we have an equal position. My rook is defending the bishop. My opponent has the bishop pair. Yeah, but I think we can say it's an equal position, yeah? Okay, but after rook fd1, my opponent took on a2. I played b3, trying to imprison his queen and try to get some advantage out of it. It's also possible to play bishop f2, and then after bishop f8, yeah, black is better. I don't know how much better because my pieces are developed, but I have to try to defend this pawn and try to get some kind of counterplay because I have a pawn less. So okay, um, if black takes on b2, it's also possible, and black is better. Yeah, I don't know if white would be able to avoid these pawns marching forward. So white has a problem here. Okay, then after b3, Murillo played queen a5, very prudent, correctly. So he won a pawn, and now he's gonna uh, repost his queen to a better place, maybe dominate the board, putting his queen on d5. Then bishop f2. I was a little bit afraid of this uh, rook here taking some kind of, and my king is on the dark square, so I played bishop f2. It's also better possible to play bishop d2, trying to exchange some pieces, but maybe I would give black some time to develop his bishop to d7. Okay, after bishop f2, bishop d7. Now my opponent has connected his rooks. h3. Actually, I didn't know what to play here because my pieces were well developed and I didn't want to make crazy moves. So I played this weighty move h3. According to the engines, it's better to try to exchange this good bishop, but my opponent would play this, maybe. And after some exchanges, yeah, there are some crazy lines here, but yeah, we didn't play this. So I played this simple h3. My opponent played rook a d8, so it's a good move because next he could move his bishop to a better place, and this rook would um, x-ray my queen, so it's dangerous. I move the rook, the queen. Yes, it's better to remove and get out of this x-ray. There's an idea here to play bishop h4, but then my opponent would take control of the c file and maybe we could exchange some pieces here, but there's something really crazy when you have less material, when you are down material, it's not a good idea to exchange pieces. And this is one of the mistakes I'm gonna make in this game. I exchanged the rooks, one pair of rooks, but yeah, try not to exchange pieces when you are one or two pawns down because this helps your opponent. Okay, so after queen c4, rook c8, attacking my queen. Yeah, this is good. My opponent has the control of the c file. Queen d3. What else? The computer suggests queen f1, but my opponent would take anyway. So one pair of um, rooks is exchanged, and my opponent would take control of the e file. Yes. So queen d3, rook takes, queen d5. So my opponent has taken control of the board. His queen is in the middle of the board. His bishops are very well posted. His rook dominates the file. So black's better. There's an interesting crazy move here that my opponent didn't see. Yeah, could you see this? It's to take on h3. Yeah. Why is it a good move? Because if I take on h3, my opponent has this check, king f1, and boom, queen c1 check. My opponent would win one pawn and they exchange. And here, white is busted, yeah, so it would be better to resign. Okay, but luckily Murillo didn't see this. He played this good move too. Queen d5 is excellent. Okay, then rook d1. And then I remember at this moment I thought about Karpov. Karpov is a guy who is able to put his pieces in very, very good positions, and all his pieces are defending each other. So that's what I thought here. Yeah, I'm worse. White is a pawn down, so I'm gonna try to keep all my pieces defended and try to avoid any surprise or something. That's why I played rook d1. My opponent played this crazy move, bishop f8. Interesting because he was trying to move his bishop out of this dangerous place. Maybe he was afraid of some tries to exchange some pieces, but yeah. And bishop f8 is good because he's gonna change the diagonal of this bishop. He's gonna put this bishop on this diagonal. It's much better. Okay, black could also have played queen e5. It's a good move too. Okay, so after bishop f8, I played rook c1. I didn't know what to play, so white is in a kind of a zugzwang here. There are no good moves, no plans. You have to wait and have to try to hold the position and try not to lose. That's bad. The computer suggests, Stockfish suggests g5, but it's not good. This would create some kinds of holes here, yeah, around my king. So I was not happy with this move. This is not a move that humans make. Okay, so rook c1, b5. Okay, again that excellent move. Yeah, to take the pawn at h3 would be a bomb. Yeah, I can't take on h3 because there's this check here and the double, the check, and my rook would fall. So also good is g5, queen g5. Then I have to go back, and then my opponent can take on h3 because my king spins, and g3 and h6. Black now has two pawns, so I think this position would be impossible to defend. Then b5, I try to attack my opponent's pawn at a6, yeah, trying to gain some counterattack and some kind of time. Maybe if I win one pawn, I get one pawn here, then the position would be equal again. Then my opponent defended here, queen b7, defended the pawn, the a6 pawn. It's also possible to play rook a8. So queen b7, rook d1. I move my rook back to the d file, yeah, so I can keep my pieces well defended. There's this move here to play the knight to e2, but I don't know, maybe it would help my opponent to move. So my knight is well placed here, so why to move? Yeah, the computer suggests these kinds of moves because they know we are worse, and yeah, but usually as human beings we try to keep, if this knight is good here, let's keep it here. Rook c8, so my opponent is the owner, is the boss of the a column and the c column. So what can I do? Better would have been to play a5, yeah, so to put the pawns in march, trying to make a passed pawn. Yeah. But white has a losing ending. If we go to an ending, to the end game, black's gonna win. So rook c8, uh, queen d2. I was just making moves. There's nothing to be done here. There's no plan. I'm worse, so I have to wait. The computer suggests knight f5, but then black would take, and there are some things here like, yeah, to try to get this diagonal. I can play queen f6, bishop e7 is a good move to try to remove, no, not try, yeah, to remove my queen from f6. But guys, take a look. There's a crazy move here. If bishop g7, white wins immediately because there's rook d8 check. Black has to take. Queen takes check. Bishop f8 is the only move, and bishop c5, a crushing move. Yeah, so white wins immediately. There's nothing to be done here. See how complex some positions are? Black is better, but one move, just one mistake, and it's all over. So after bishop e7, that's the correct move. Queen e5, and then queen c7, trying to exchange the queens. And remember that black is better, and if you go to an end game, it's not good for white. Black is winning here. So white has to avoid simplifications, to avoid exchange of pieces. My opponent came back to uh, queen d5, rook c1. This is a mistake. Remember I told you, when you are a pawn down or 2 pawns down, try to avoid exchanges. Don't exchange pieces. And this, the computer suggests queen a5, rook a8, rook d5. As you can see, all the pieces, yeah, Karpovian style, all the pieces are connected. They are defending each other. Yeah, so the bishop is defended by the rook and the king. The knight is defended by the bishop and the rook. So they are all connected, and the rook is defended by the queen. So try to think about this during your games. And then h6, black's better. I don't know if black uh, is able to finish white's off immediately, but black's better. So after rook c1, my opponent took, yeah, of course. Then I took the rook, and g6. See, as I told you before, my opponent wants to try to get control of this diagonal. Yes, but even better than g6 is a5. Yeah, trying to get a passed pawn on the queen's uh, side, on the queen side. So g6, queen d2. I have to wait, move to and fro. There's nothing good to be done here. Okay, so bishop e6. My opponent can't do this because my queen is undefended. I can't move or do anything. There's a much better move here, that is b4. b4 is good. Why is it good? Because it cements this pawn at b3, and the next move, the next idea or plan is to play the bishop to g7, exchange the bishop for the knight, and attack this pawn here. As it is on a white square, I don't have the bishop, the light squared bishop, so it's gonna be impossible to defend it, because this bishop is gonna go to um, e6, and rook, queen, and bishop are gonna attack this pawn on b3, so it's impossible to defend it. But after bishop e6, I played b4. So this is a good move in a very bad situation, a very bad position. It's a good move. Yeah, I try to put it in a black square because I prevent a5, And I can also defend this pawn on b4 by playing bishop e1. Yes. Murillo played queen a2. It's a good move. Yeah. The computer suggests queen d6. Yeah, trying to attack this pawn. Maybe play bishop g7, try to exchange everything, and then march the king to the side of the board and win the end game. Then bishop e1 and bishop c4, so trying to get control of everything and make things harder for white. So queen a2, bishop a3. I didn't want to exchange the rooks there, because when he played queen a2, yeah, my queen's attacked. I could move it or exchange it, but remember, exchanging you go to a lost end game. So I played bishop e3. Yeah, the computer suggests this: queen takes on a2, bishop a2, bishop e1, defending the pawn, bishop g7, knight c6, bishop e3, e6. The king comes, so king f2, king f8, king e3, king e8, g4, bishop d5, knight d4, and king d7. Black is better here, but not much. And there's even a crazy move here that is very plausible to happen. That's taking on d4 check, and that king takes, bishop takes on f3 and g5, and then it's a draw, because one pawn stops three pawns. This guy here can't get any of these two pawns here, because next I can play h5, h4, and then this bishop is gonna defend the pawns very well. The king is near the pawn, so it can come and attack these pawns, so it's an equal position. But I didn't take his rook. I played bishop e3. So see, sometimes we think we have to play by principles. Yeah, all grandmasters, they say you can't exchange pieces if you are down material, but in this situation you have to, because you force and you go to a better end game. It's not good, it's not equal, but it's better than what happened. So very difficult. And remember, this is not a classical game. It's a rapid game, 10 minutes plus 10 seconds increment. So I think around this time we're playing very fast, because we have very little time on the clocks. And I played bishop e3, it's a mistake. And my opponent played bishop g7, it's also a mistake. What's the winning move here? Bishop b1 check, because now I have to move my king or put the queen here and exchange queens, and then this pawn is gonna fall. So that would be the winning move. Of course, my opponent's a strong one. He would be able to find this if he had more time, but we were playing very fast, so no time to think. We just have to move. So bishop g7. Then I took here on e6, and it's a good move. It's a very good move, because now white almost equalizes the position. Then there's My opponent's an interesting one, is a strong one, because he always plays intermezzos, yeah? And then he took on d2, yeah? And he played well, because this is the best move. Taking on e6 is not good, because then there's a kind of attack, and then check, bishop f8, bishop c5, and then he has to play these moves to get perpetual. Yeah, so check, 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 check. See, then you get perpetual, and it's draw. Then that's why he played queen takes d2. So bishop d2. Now my opponent took on e6, queen, king f2. Now the kings go to the center of the board. King f7, and this is a mistake. Oh boy, I didn't see this check on h6. Yeah, the correct one is to play king e2 to avoid the check. So if I keep the bishops, it's probably a draw. Yeah, but playing king e3 and allowing bishop h6 check is a serious mistake. And here white is lost. Yeah, let's see what happens. F4. I have to try to avoid simplification, because if I go to a pure kings and pawns endgame, it's lost for white. My opponent took advantage of the pin. G3. If I play king e4, it's gonna be the same. So yeah, take. We go to a simple pawn endgame, and black wins because of um, the opposition. Yeah, so here white is lost. So that's why I didn't play king e4. I remember I thought about this, and I tried to keep my pawns protected, and try not to exchange the bishops. G5, so again, but better is to take on f4, and now goes like this. Yeah, then white is lost anyway, because yeah, it goes to a simple pawns and kings endgame like this. It's gonna be very similar to what happened during the game. Yeah, so as you can see, black gets the opposition. Yeah, now if I play king d4, black takes the opposition here. Yeah, and it's gonna take this pawn, and black gets quicker. Yeah, promotes to queen quicker than white. And if I play king f4, then black goes to the other side, and he's gonna collect the pawn on b4 and queen anyway. So I played this. I try to keep the pawns as much as possible. Black took, I took, we simplified, and here, this position, I remember I thought during the seconds I'm gonna lose this game, because black is gonna take the position, and it's a miracle if I can survive here. My opponent, of course, took the opposition. I played this, the last pawn moves before having to move my king, and h5, perfect. Yeah, wins the opposition. Now white is lost. King e4, king e6, king d4, and my opponent could have played this, and black wins. Yeah, wins, goes back to the previous position we got before. Yeah, well, black is gonna take this pawn. I'm gonna go after these pawns, but I'm too tempy later. So, okay, so king d6, king e4. I was trying to play, and we were playing very quickly. We had uh, like 2 seconds. We were playing on the increment, yeah, and kind of desperate. Uh, king c6. If if king e6, then king f4, and then again, yeah, goes back to the previous winning position. Then my opponent played this, king c6. I went back, and he played king b6. This is the crucial mistake. See, it's so complicated. Why is it a mistake? Now black can't win. White is able to survive. It's fascinating. Instead of king b6, king d6 would win the opposition and the game, because then I have to move. And in case of king e4, king e6, opposition again, king f4, and king d5. In case of king d4, king f5. So it's losing. So king b6, and then king c3. Yeah, I stopped to think. Now I have to try something, yeah, to liquidate here and try to get a draw. Of course, I couldn't calculate anything. We were playing very fast, no time to think. Yeah. Then now white secures the draw, because this pawn is gonna be taken, but white can get to the key squares in time. Okay, so a5, good. I have to take. That's the only move that is able to draw. King takes, king b3, king b6, king b4, getting the opposition, but I'm trying to fight in a very difficult situation. King c6, king b3, yeah, my opponent triangulates, and king c6, c5, king c3, b4 check. I I play king b3, king b5, king b2, king c4, see, triangulation, king c2, king d4, king b3, king e4, king takes. It's fascinating, this, yeah. Black is gonna take this pawn, but I am gonna be able to draw. King f4, king c3, king g4, king d3, king takes on h4, and king e2. This is the only move that draws. If I played king e3, then my opponent gets the opposition and wins the game. Yeah. Okay, but I played the correct move because I'm trying to get to h1. If if I get to h1, the draw is secured. My opponent played king h3, king f3, king h2, king f2, h4, king f1, h3, king f2, king h1, king f1, h2, and king f2, and draws. So it was a very good game. I hope you liked it. And I hope you learned something from it. So sometimes we have to avoid simplifications, but sometimes it's necessary. And never give up. Yeah, try to play and try to get at least a draw. Thank you very much. Take care. Bye bye.